Hello, everybody. Okay, I'm really going to speak up loud because I know for some inexplicable reason the sound was bad. Every time you have those delightful updates from, Dr. Bill, things tend to go awry on my programs and, it interferes with things like sound. But anyhow, I don't want to wane on about that because I know you guys don't come here to hear my technical difficulties. So, thank you to all of you guys who went across to Andrew's channel and watched my podcast interview with Andrew. If you haven't yet, my previous video gives the link to that, although I may pop another link under this one. So basically, I was on this interviewed on this channel. I went into a summary of a lot of my predictions, and I went into some of my past why I got into astrology, and I made the case for astrology, saying, it's not anti-science, it's not anti-Christian. In fact, it's part of the secret science that only the powers that should not be really understand. But today, I'm first going to talk about the GOP in relation to astrology and make, well, it's not really a prediction, but it's something that's quite interesting about the GOP. I'm going to touch on Ukraine. Then I'm going to talk about George Galloway's recent podcast and video and electricity prices going up in relation to the Great Reset. So first of all, as you know, I recently was saying to you guys that Uranus was conjunct the North Node in Taurus, and this hadn't happened since 1854. So other than Britain and France declaring war on Russia in the Crimean War in 1854, which, as you can see, is very relevant to events today, the GOP was formed in 1854. And I think that is also quite relevant because right now we have kind of a hostile takeover of the GOP by the MAGA movement. We've got so many mega candidates going in on the primaries or being primaried. I'm not sure what they call it in America. And that's going to be very, very interesting. And we see the kind of decimation of the Liz Cheney, Mitch McConnell, really grotesque rhino side of the Republican Party, who is basically pro-war, neoliberal, just everything bad, bad, bad. And they don't stand up for America at all. They just as bad as the other lot. So, of course, in this country, they were so sad about what happened to Liz Cheney. I bought the Times newspaper only because I actually needed to wrap up some old crockery to throw away, which was the only reason I had it here. And as I was throwing away something, I saw this article about how, the dangers of what's happened to Liz Cheney. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We've got idiots on the radio like Julie Hartley Brewer who just can't see, the truth if it slapped her in the face. But it's really sad that our media establishment in this country look at war hawkish, neoliberal, stab your country in the back people like that Cheney, who obviously is tied into every sort of corruption as you can possibly imagine. And they see this as a sad day. I mean, come on, I just don't get people. Anyway, that's right. So, as you know, 1854, again, escalation of tensions between Britain and France with Russia, where they sided with the Ottoman Empire against Russia in the Crimean War, and we see an escalation there. Okay. This Ukraine thing, as I said in my prediction the other day, it's not going away. And the reason it's not going away is because it's so important for the Great Reset. While this whole Ukraine thing is going on, and it's been pretty hot in Ukraine and that, but wait until the cooler weather, it's going to hot up again. They need it to keep fueling it. Boris Johnson's just been over there talking to Zelensky again. Boris Johnson is more out the country than in the country. We've got a zombie government. Anyway, if only we did have a zombie government, but of course they are still very active doing things they shouldn't be. They need Ukraine, the whole conflict there, to keep going, to keep the fuel prices high because it plays into the Great Reset. What's it doing? It's decimating disposable income. People with less disposable income can't go out to restaurants. They can't travel, of course. They want to get rid of travel. British Airways keeps slashing, was it 1.8 billion tickets or seats they've cancelled before next year, April? They're cutting down. What do? You reduce supply, price goes through the roof because demand is the same, supply reduction, price hikes. They're going to make travel unaffordable. People are going to be less able to use cars and travel about locally because of petrol prices. Less disposable income means, as I say, less money spent on restaurants, leisure, entertainment, which means small businesses go to the wall. So you've got more people without incomes, more people getting fired because of the small business. This favors big business, which is what the Great Reset is all about. And it also means more and more people with their back against the wall because so much money is just going to heat their home that they're going to have to bring in universal basic income, which is exactly what they want. So you can see how on the road we are to you will own nothing and you will be happy. People can't pay their mortgage, same thing. Inflation sky high. People are basically going to get a fifth of a pay cut with the inflation, which they say will reach 18%. But we know when they say it, it's going to be majorly underestimated because there's never a time when these so-called experts get a prediction right. And coming from the economics world, I know it doesn't work. It's all hocus pocus, you know. Astrology hocus pocus? No, all these experts hocus pocus. Economics hocus pocus. Anyway, so what else I wanted to say about Ukraine? Yeah, it's the advancement of Agenda 2030, which is why they're going to keep it going. The collapse of Germany. Germany has been the one country underpinning everything. As I said in my interview with Andrew, Germany obviously is the biggest contributor to the EU. The second biggest was the UK, and the UK and Germany were far away bigger than the next contributors, which would be the Netherlands, Belgium, Finland, Sweden, right? You knock out the UK, Poland took out as much as the UK put in. And I remember Jeff Randall on Sky News back in 2012 saying that the Italian and Greek economies are not viable, and the only way that Greece is sustainable is by a continued injection of cash from Germany into Greece. But now, with all this fuel price and the lack of energy in Germany because of the problems with Ukraine, it's going to decimate their industry. Once you take out Germany, there's no EU, there's nothing to prop all the other countries up. Bearing in mind, what was World War I about? Taking out Germany. What was World War II about? Taking out Germany. Now we've got taking out Germany again. It's simply because that country happens to have an incredibly strong industrial base. The people have a lot of initiative, motivation. They're very inventive. They're very good with technical things. So Germany always rises again, and it's a strong country, and the globalists obviously do not want a strong country like Germany, just in case they can't control it. So again, what is the green agenda all about? It's about less choice. More businesses going out of business, less choice until we're all reliant on the biggest businesses. It's not great. Okay, now George Galloway, let's talk about his show the other day. He mentioned some really good points. It was a passionate display. He was really trying to wake people up to the fact that, you know, they've got to stand up now. He was advocating sort of general strikes. He was mentioning the inflation. He was saying the UK is going to the dogs. He mentioned, in his words, they are now pouring shit into our rivers and into our oceans because legally that's been happening. Everything is absolutely falling apart. He quite rightly says that there's no one in government that is currently standing up for the people. There's no one in government representing the people. They represent the elites. That's why they don't care if you can't pay your electricity, if you freeze in cold, if you can't pay food, if the cost of living decimates your family and your family's future. They do not care. We do not have representatives in any of the parties who are interested. This ridiculous toing and froing with Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. It's not that they're clueless. They do not want to tackle the energy crisis because it is a key part of the plan of Agenda 2030. They don't want you traveling, and they want you to have no power. And when you're just worried about feeding and heating your home and doing the basics, you have no power because you are totally consumed with that. Sorry, I'm talking loudly here. It's this thing. I'm not sure if it's recording me. So Galloway quite rightly mentions that. He also quite rightly mentions that once Rishi Sunak is finished with the fiasco of this leadership contest, which has got nothing about leadership because Liz Truss had it won from day one, he's only doing it to bolster his profile because he's disappearing off to America, to Wall Street, never to be heard of again as soon as this contest is over. Mark my words, he's a banker. Through and through, he was never interested in doing anything for this country. None of them are. They could tackle the fuel poverty tomorrow by cutting the green taxes and taking the VAT off and negotiating for peace in Russia and Ukraine. They are not interested because they're out for you. Okay. So George Galloway, now where I have a contention with him or an issue, is he says, our leaders have been taking advice from a 16-year-old girl, i.e. Greta Thunberg. This isn't about Greta. It's like buying a defective product from Estee Lauder and blaming Liz Hurley or whoever their model. Liz Hurley was their hot model for a long time. You know, the products at Estee Lauder have got nothing to do with Liz Hurley. She's just the picture. And that's Greta. It's nothing to do with her. It's Blackrock, Vanguard. These are the powers pushing the green agenda and just using people like Greta to fool the gullible and the young people. So I don't know why Galloway doesn't say that. He also continues to mention all sorts of relevant and salient points without mentioning the reset, the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab's book, the fact that the World Economic Forum are pushing all of this. It's not our government, it's not Boris Johnson, it's not any of these fools, it's the power in the World Economic Forum, which is the top countries in the world. And what are they? All boils down to Vanguard and Blackrock, State Street. We know the people. Okay, so as he says, you're on your own. You've got no government protection, right? The other issue, which I will mention, is a lot of people say, oh, it's like the Nazis. It's the Nazis. It's not like the Nazis, right? The World Economic Forum. This has got nothing to do with being like the Nazis. It's Bolshevism. The Nazis, yes, there's a link to fascism, because the Nazis were, the strong authoritarian government working with top industry to create a formidable force that worked together to power the economy and to control people. But that's not really happening, because in the US, the UK, we don't have a strong political movement. We don't have a strong leader. There's no Hitler. These are weak puppets that are totally controlled by big business corporations and industry. So there's no government factor. There's no strong army. There's just government puppets who are totally controlled. So in that way, no, it's not Nazism. There's no input from our governments at all. They're just agents for those. And like I say, it's Blackrock, Vanguard. They push the wokeism. They push the mass immigration, everything like that. Okay, what is Stalinism? Why is it Stalinist? Well, look at all the purges that are happening, the censorship. With the Nazis, they were very interested in building up industry and better industry and improving the economy and push back against bankers and against central banks. This is a capitulation to central banks. It's a decimation of industry, not an improvement of industry. So again, these comparisons are all wrong. What a lot of people don't realize is that the Bolshevik movement and subsequent movements, particularly Bela Kun in Hungary, were also pushing this kind of pornographic agenda on children. So the whole thing about pushing porn, pushing all that sort of depravity, debauchery, and depraved sex agenda, everything like that, is all about communism and Bolshevism. It was going on with the communists in Germany, and it was going on with the Bolsheviks. It's a way of demoralizing, destroying culture, and destroying Christianity, which is another key thing which Bolshevism was about, destroying Christianity or Christian ethos or Christian values, even if you're not really like a practicing Christian. It's also the decimation of independent income, which I don't think the Nazis were doing right, which is what they're doing now, decimating independent income, pushing you to the wall where you can't afford anything. The Holodomor and the war on farmers, that is part of Bolshevism. Nazism wasn't interested in farmers, they encouraged farmers, right? Bolshevism was a thing that collectivized the farms, decimating farming, decimating the food supply. They had the gulags, yes, well, gulags, concentration, that's similar. Purges, possibly similar in some ways. Another thing which Galloway mentioned is the lack of law and order. He was mentioning these people running amok with machetes in Leeds, there's chaos going on in Burger Kings in Nottingham, and he mentioned Rotherham as well, alluding to that. And he said, we've got a total breakdown in law and order, and Boris Johnson is doing nothing. What happened under Stalinism? He released all the criminals to menace the middle class, because what we have going on here is a Bolshevik revolution against the middle class. And that's why they're not worried about law and order. They just want to menace and intimidate everyday people who are exercising free speech rather. So that's something. Then, of course, we have what people should be crazy. I mean, they should be crazy about this. We have this mass immigration. Most of the people, as George Galloway and David Vance have quite rightly said, coming across the channel are Kurds and Albanians, mainly Albanians, then Kurds. Neither of those countries are in war. Both are actually NATO protectorates, so there's no way those people are being discriminated against unless NATO is discriminating against them. Yet they continue to come across the channel to be put up in hotels at £80 a night indefinitely, where they will get free food and free electricity, while the taxpayer has to fund that when the ordinary British person cannot afford to heat their home. So the priorities of this government are sending more and more money into a black pit into Ukraine, when people there are saying the money is not getting there in aid, it's not going to weapons, or if it does, it goes to weapons to be resold on the black market. So that money is not going where people think it's going into fueling corruption, into an ever increasing spiral. It's finding its way back to the pockets of the usual suspects, let's just say that, right? So hoteliers are very happy. They've got full hotels all year round, guaranteed income from the government of £80 a night for all these rooms because of the mass immigration. That is where your tax money is going, and that's what the government are interested in organizing. They are not interested in helping you, and people need to wake up to that. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, guys.